This is where the legends of vampires come from. They have superhuman strength, speed, and agility. They're capable of shapeshifting, and they're incredibly difficult to kill. Of course, they also feed on humans, at least drink their blood, and that's true to reality as well, which you'll see later. The alien in John Carpenter's The Thing is based on them, as is the T-1000 in Terminator 2. Both shapeshifters that can imitate other life forms, and are almost completely resistant to physical attacks, except for explosives and high heat. As you've seen, they can resist heat up to a point, but I'm certain that if it gets hot enough, it will kill their cells. So the ideal munition to use against them is something that has explosive force and high heat, which would be a high explosive incendiary round. As with vampires, decapitation will kill them, if they can't regenerate in time. But as I said, your chances of accomplishing that when they see it coming are just about zero. I suppose that's why in common vampire lore, they only try to kill them when they're asleep. This past year, I had a conversation with a Drac, a male imitation, who told me that they're immortal. I know that they live much longer than humans, and that when their current human identity or persona dies, they can receive a new imitation code and become someone else, perhaps even starting over as a child. But are they truly immortal? I don't know. It seems unlikely to me, but anything is possible. Baphomet is depicted as a humanoid creature with a goat's head and legs. He has scales on his abdomen, and snakes intertwined around a rod coming up from his groin, which is obviously a phallic symbol. The scales and snakes mean that he's a reptilian creature, so the goat's head with horns is actually a dragon's head with horns. You've seen that they have 2 toes in their native forms, which would have talons on the ends, so that's represented by the cloven hooves, and the elevated ankle is similar to the hind leg of a hoofed animal. That explains the goat's legs. The rod represents a penis, and he also has breasts, so that tells you that he's a hermaphrodite. Baphomet's wings represent an ability to fly, but I doubt that they have wings in their native forms. For a creature of that weight to attain flight, it would take a huge wingspan, with each wing being much longer than the body, so it's very unlikely. But as we know, they can levitate using either their polymorphic ability or technology. They can fly without wings. The torch on the top of his head is obviously symbolic. It represents illumination, the possession of knowledge which allows one to see, while the rest are kept in the dark. So the Illuminati are dragons, and humans are their mindless thralls. He's pointing at the moon because that's their home base. That's how they arrived here in the first place. It's a mobile space fortress, a Battlestar Lucifer, the eye in the sky, and Lucy in the sky with diamonds. This symbol makes it clear that Baphomet is a dragon. The medical caduceus is a clear match to Baphomet. It has the rod with the 2 snakes intertwined around it, and wings. That's another representation of the Dracs, to say, we control the medical system. The vast majority of doctors are Dracs, and I'm very familiar with this in my personal life. The symbol of Islam is a crescent moon with a pentagram. That represents the same crescent moon and pentagram with Baphomet. Anytime you see a 5-pointed star, it's meant to be a pentagram. They could make stars with any number of points, with 3 or more, but it's almost always 5. As you can see, there are many countries that have pentagrams in their flags, though few of them in there have non-pentagram stars. Almost all of the stars that you see used in other formats are pentagrams, like the star on top of the Christmas tree, or Hollywood stars. I don't know what the relevance of this symbol is to them, what it represents exactly, but they do make it very prominent. These 2 pictures tell the whole story. A dragon in a pentagram with the moon above. That's the same as Baphomet, except that here it's openly shown as a dragon. The other one shows the dragon's face reflected in the blade, which is aligned with her human face. That's saying that she's actually a dragon, disguised as a human. So this artist is telling you that Baphomet, Satan, is a god of dragons, and that his children are shapeshifters that are imitating human bodies. This cover art from the band Pack says the same thing. Satan and his children are dragons. It also shows that they've enslaved humanity. Both of these are depicting shapeshifters in different ways. The one on the left is a relief from the ancient Mayan civilization. It's a man coming out of a serpent's mouth. The man is not being eaten. He's emerging from the reptilian form. He's changing from the reptilian form into something that looks like a human. The one on the right comes from an Italian Renaissance painting, and he's depicting a shapeshifter by simply putting a man's head on a dragon's body. The dragon kings of China are depicted in the opposite way, by putting a dragon's head on a man's body. And they can do this in reality, shift specific parts of their bodies completely in one form, while keeping the rest of their bodies completely in the other form. So for example, they could have a human head on a Drax torso, with the arms in tree imitation form, and the legs in werewolf imitation form. They could create some very bizarre looking mythological creatures this way, and I'm sure they've done that in the past. In Dungeons & Dragons, all dragons are capable of shapeshifting, and they frequently use this to imitate other races. In recent times, the dragons of Toril were nearly all recluses, or at the very least deceptive to their true nature, living amongst other species in polymorph form. And there the truth is spelled out in Dungeons & Dragons. Of course, the reality is they're doing far more than just living amongst other species. They're completely dominating humanity on this planet. They have humans under total mind control, and they create everything about their existence. In recent times, they've made dragons popular in the mainstream media, with Tolkien's book The Hobbit leading the way. There have also been a number of characters in movies, TV shows, and video games that are capable of shapeshifting. This one is Flemeth in the Dragon Age series, who can transform into a dragon. She's supposedly a human who gained this ability from evil spirits, but in reality, she'd be a dragon that's polymorphed into human imitation form. There's also the game Drakensang, in which shapeshifting reptilians have infiltrated and taken over human civilization, disguised as humans, of course. The entire game is based on uncovering that conspiracy. The other cover is from Divinity 2, and in that game, the player character is able to transform into a dragon. This is the character Saskia from The Witcher, Assassin of Kings. Unlike Flemeth, Saskia is naturally a dragon, and her human form is an imitation. She's in her human imitation form when you first encounter her in the story, so you think she's human for most of the game, until she reverts to her native form to defend a city. There's a large hole at the base of Saskia's horn, right behind the eye socket. That's similar to what we see on Pocker's Devil. Presumably that's the ear cavity, which would mean that they have excellent hearing, despite the lack of external ears. The horn would also help to amplify sounds, as it intensifies and transmits the vibrations into the ear, almost like a megaphone. A large ear hole like this would also pick up lower frequencies than a human ear. The newborn also has several holes in the side of its head. Given that all three have them, it's very likely that this is a feature of the native form. So it seems that all of their native senses are superior to humans, except perhaps for touch. Here are three more horned gods, all representations of Satan. Left to right, Asherah, Moloch, and Pan. The Drax put Asherah forward as a female consort to my father. As you know, the Drax are hermaphrodites, so Satan can also be represented as a female. All of the Asherah poles were destroyed by King Hezekiah, and he was one of the few kings after David who actually followed my father's commandments. The figure on the left is the deity Set from Egyptian mythology, and the two others are Baal, who originates from Babylon. The most obvious similarity is that they're in the exact same pose. The one on the right shows the reason why they're posed this way, holding a thunderbolt in the left hand and a sword raised in the right. Another similarity is that Set and the Baal figure on the right both have horns. At this point, I shouldn't have to explain what that means. You know that those are dragon's horns. Anytime you see a horned god, it means that it's a dragon god. Specifically, the god we know today is Satan. Satan is a god of dragons, and not surprisingly, he's a dragon himself. Set and the Baal on the left have those long headpieces which represent the elongated cranium that's also part of the native form. So it's clear that Set and Baal are the same god, and that god is Satan, a malevolent god of dragons, who has been and still is the king of this world. Of course, he's also known as Lucifer, Beelzebub, which comes from Baalzebub, meaning Lord of the Flies. Those are the names that humans know him by today, but he has a true name in Draconic, the native language of the Drax. His identity to humans changes from culture to culture, era to era, but his true name and identity are always known to the Drax. They are his children, and unlike humans, they never forget their father. In ancient times, Moloch was most often represented by a bull, and once again, that horned animal is actually a dragon. The tribes of Israel sacrificed their children to these burning altars of Moloch and Baal. They cooked their children alive inside these ovens, so they could sacrifice their souls to Satan. That's what was going on. It also helped the Drax to reduce the Jewish population, which is most effective when you kill those who have yet to reproduce. That's why my father commanded his people to destroy these other groups in Israel. He knew that these societies were under the control of the Drax, and that they would corrupt his people with their worship of Satan. He also knew that the Drax would infiltrate and take over his people if they were in contact with these groups. So the only way to stop that from happening was to completely destroy them. But the tribes of Israel didn't do that. Instead, they interacted with these corrupted societies and were corrupted themselves, and they were infiltrated and ultimately taken over by the Drax. My people always think that they know better than my father, but they know nothing. That's why they ended up in the hand of Satan, and are still there today. Burning your children on an altar of what is clearly a non-human god. That's how badly the Dracs destroyed their minds. That's what my father was trying to prevent. But as usual, they wouldn't listen to him. They don't burn their children anymore, but the Dracs still have complete control of the Jews in Israel. And they still won't listen to my father. While the Jews were burning their children for the Dracs, on the other side of the world, they were getting the Aztecs and Mayans to butcher themselves, so they could eat their flesh and drink their blood. That's what you're looking at here. These are Dracs eating human sacrifices. Except for the top right picture, which is an artist's interpretation of Popol Vuh. The other three are from Aztec codices which were written in the 16th century, copied from earlier codices. Interestingly, the Drac in the bottom right picture has 3 fingers on each hand, which we know is accurate to the native form. It also has 3 toes, but one of them is positioned at the back of the foot. It's possible that they do have another toe like that. I've just never seen that one reverted. The others all have green skin, but for some reason this one doesn't. The one in the top right picture is holding what appears to be a weapon in its right hand, with fire coming out of the muzzle. There's also a large bat-like creature next to it, which could represent a bat imitation form. That's definitely part of vampire mythology, so that supports what we're seeing here. The Aztecs and Mayans obviously didn't want to sacrifice their own people, but understandably, they were intimidated by these monstrous aliens that had vastly superior technology. If they resisted, they'd all be killed, so they really didn't have any choice. It must have been a nightmare living in those societies. The only good thing you can say is that they knew the truth about their existence. All human sacrifice comes from the Dracs, from their father Satan. And it continues today, but now it all stays literally underground. The vast majority of missing children in the world are eaten by Dracs, or used in blood rituals. Dragons are known as man-eaters, and that is true to reality. In recent times, Moloch is represented by an owl rather than a bull. Presumably they wanted to use a new symbol which wouldn't be connected to the human sacrifice rituals of the past. Though oddly, they didn't change the name. Obviously they chose the owl because it represents wisdom, illumination. It's also a less aggressive symbol than a bull, and even further displaced from its true identity as a dragon. Every year the elites do these supposedly mock human sacrifices at this Moloch altar in Bohemian Grove, California. Many US presidents have attended these ceremonies, and the roads around the US Capitol grounds form the shape of an owl, which of course is Moloch. This is the same god that the Jews were sacrificing their children to thousands of years ago. Moloch, Baal, Asherah, Tiamat, Set, Pan, Baphomet, and Satan. They're all the same dragon god. And these elites that you see worshipping him are his children. They're not humans who decided to become Satanists. They're dragons that are worshipping their creator. Almost every culture from around the world has some mythology about dragons. They can be found in legends, ancient works, monuments, coats of arms, and national symbols. The most common explanation is that humans mistakenly identified other creatures as dragons, crocodiles, lizards, and I've heard some say elephants and whales. Another typical explanation is that humans simply made dragons up from their imagination. Apparently all of these different cultures from around the world made up the same imaginary creature, with the same basic appearance. But even if that were true, why would they build monuments and such to a creature that doesn't even exist? What they usually say is that humans invented dragons as an object of fear, to make themselves afraid, because according to them, humans thrive on fear. So all of these different cultures imagined the same non-existent creature, and made legends and displays of it to make themselves afraid, because they love being afraid. That's their serious explanation. I've also heard the explanation that ancient societies dug up dinosaur bones and took them to be dragons. Not quite as stupid as the "they made it all up" explanation, but still stupid. No, the reason that dragons appear in all of these different cultures is because dragons are real. That's the logical explanation, which I've proven is true. And it's not humans putting up these monuments. The Dracs are putting forward these monuments and symbols mostly as a sign of their dominance, and how they can flaunt themselves in plain sight, right in front of the deaf, blind, and dumb humans. We're right on top of you, but you're so blind and stupid you don't see a thing. That's what they're saying. Dragons usually appear in mythology as beasts that only possess animal-level intelligence, but when they're shown wearing crowns, it definitely says that they're sentient beings, and that they are in fact in charge. The one on the left is also eating a human child, and the meaning of that is clear. It shows their dominance over humanity, and that humans essentially exist as livestock to them. The one on the right is from the coat of arms of Tatarstan, and the one on the left is a coat of arms from Renaissance Italy. That coat of arms is also used for the Alfa Romeo logo. If you have a working mind, you'll know the truth about your existence just by looking at this, that your rulers are dragons. This is the Ouroboros, which is a serpent encircling a human child and skull, and it says, from birth to death. From birth to death, they own you. And of course, the serpent is wearing a crown. It's not difficult to get the meaning of this. This is the same painting that I showed earlier, from Renaissance Italy. We know who the dragons are, and the dog almost certainly represents humanity, obediently waiting to be leashed by its masters. The green dragon is holding some sort of large ring, but I have no idea what that represents, unless it's intended to be a new leash. The middle frame is a shot of the Wheel of Pain from the original Conan the Barbarian movie. This shows the hierarchy of the races that control this world. At the very top, there's a reptilian creature, and we know what that represents. Directly below it, there are figures that look like birds' heads, possibly a sentient avian race. On the level below the walkway, there are humanoid faces that have a reptilian appearance. These must represent the Drac shapeshifters that live among us, controlling our society. They're the agents in the Matrix movie. Of course, below them you have the humans turning the wheel, which you don't see in this shot. Humans are at the very bottom of the hierarchy, and they're not really considered part of it. They're just cattle. It's possible that the Dracs at the top are a different species from the shapeshifters that we see. The artist who drew the skulls showed two distinctly different species of Dracs, so this may be true. That's King Tut's death mask on the left, and that coat of arms from Renaissance Italy on the right. Like the Wheel of Pain, they both have reptilian and avian figures together, indicating that they're more or less co-rulers of this world. Notice that the serpent on Tut's mask is taller than the bird's head. That may indicate superior rank, but I'm not certain if that's the intended meaning. That's Iceland's coat of arms in the middle, which has a dragon and a bird, a rock. In the original coat of arms, it was just those two, but more recently they added the giant bull. The one on the right is the House of Borghese, the family of Pope Paul V. The other animal representations of gods were probably Dracs imitating those forms. The Egyptian god Anubis, for example, which is a jackal's head on a man's body. The Dracs could create a form like that, any kind of animal's head on a man's body. But in this case, I don't think the bird is an imitation, since it appears alongside the reptilian, sometimes wearing a crown. So I believe that this is a real species that is or was present here. They're part of the alien collective that's controlling humanity. Here are three more birds wearing crowns. The Austrian coat of arms on the right, Poland in the middle, and the House of Aleprandi on the left. Of course, the eagle and phoenix have appeared in many flags and coats of arms throughout history. Looking at these depictions, it's clear that they're a monstrous race, and they don't look benevolent either. So it's not surprising that they're allied with the Dracs. The relief on the right is a god from Assyrian mythology, which is likely a representation of this avian race. The Skeksis in the movie The Dark Crystal are almost certainly based on this race, which is probably a more realistic depiction. They do have a monstrous appearance, and there are some reptilian characteristics as well. I've never seen any reversions that indicate an avian species, so they're probably not polymorphs, but I don't know that for certain. However, they would definitely know how to identify Drac imitations. So if the Dracs decided to turn on them, they'd have to go with a direct attack rather than the usual imitation and infiltration. Since we don't see them, I don't know if this race is still present here. If they are gone, you know who did away with them. Flying craft have been seen in the skies throughout history. There's the Prodigiorum Liber from the time of the Roman Empire, which contains witness accounts of flying craft, discs and orbs. All of these pictures have a similar looking craft in them, a disc made up of segments, and they're all from different places and times. The bottom right picture is reproduced from Prodigiorum Liber, the top right are coins from France, and that's a monastery painting on the left, from the 1500s. They've always been here, no matter what level human technology is at. After all, that's how they came to this planet. They had to cross the galaxy to get here. As I said, I've seen these craft myself, in videos and in person. Obviously, they're not flying on Bernoulli's principle like planes and helicopters, and they're not using propulsion like a rocket. They're producing some kind of electromagnetic field that generates force, so they're not flying on the air. They're flying on the electromagnetic grid. But until we capture and examine one of these craft, we won't know exactly how they operate. All of the weather on this planet is generated artificially. All of it. It's not weather modification. It's weather creation. That's what the aerosol program and chemtrails are about. They're spraying to make clouds and change atmospheric conditions. It's not about culling the population. If it were, we'd all be dead by now, because it's been going on every day of our entire lives. This aerosol material accumulates moisture in the atmosphere and forms into clouds. It also reacts to electromagnetic fields, so with the correct field applied, it can be moved around and reshaped. They can also make it release its moisture to create precipitation. That's why some people can feel rain coming, because they sense the electromagnetic field being applied before it actually rains. Sometimes the fields produce strange effects, wave-like patterns, rows, or holes, though the one at the top right may be caused by an elemental force. One thing's for certain, all of that white stuff was sprayed out of craft, or fired into the atmosphere from the ground. Nature didn't make that. It was all produced artificially. That's true of all the clouds you see. So this planet does not have a natural hydrological cycle, not currently anyway, and I suspect that it never did. It's all maintained by the aerosol program. That's how they terraformed this planet in the first place. Here are a couple of pentagrams drawn by aerosol craft. You know what that means now. Satan and his children make the weather. This is a video of two orbs spraying aerosol trails. Before the introduction of planes, they sprayed trails using their own craft, and they still do, as you can see in this video. And not all of the aerosol planes that you see are actually planes. Some of them are orbs generating plane holograms. For some reason, these two are running without holographic or refractive cloaks, and they're flying quite low as well. I saw a video about 6 or 7 years ago from a guy in Australia, which was a very clear shot of an orb spraying a trail, zoomed in and well tracked. I went to download the video a few days later, but I found out that he had deleted it. After that, he started putting out videos saying that orb and UFO sightings are nonsense, that it's just planes up there spraying trails. I know now that he's a Drac who got in trouble for uploading that video, so his superiors made him take it down and switch sides. This video is the second best example I found after that one. Here's a follow-up interview with John Graff, which is in line with my observations.
John Graff is a huge anti-chemtrail activist, and he captured on March 2nd, 2017, a couple of chemtrail-producing crafts. At closer inspection, it turns out that what was generating the white billowing smoke was a couple of flying saucer-looking orbs. I ended up stabilizing, slowing down, and blowing up these objects and discovered that these vehicles were mimicking our planes in releasing these chemtrails. So I was able to get John Graff on the phone to tell us a little bit more about what we were seeing. Hey, John, thanks for sending me the video. Thanks for talking with me today. So I just wanted to ask you a few questions on this incredible capture. It's just an amazing capture. It looks like a couple of orbs making chemtrails. So could you tell me a little bit about it?
Yeah, I've been following the chemtrail operations for about 10 years, and I watch them all the time, and they're just so mysterious. And they become more mysterious because in the beginning, when I saw the spraying, it was planes. It looked like planes. It looked like people doing weather modification or cloud seeding. You know, it looked like that. But now there's a whole new element to it that's over us. There's planes that are up there shooting at high speeds, and they are just different. This is not jets. If you look at the video that I shot, when you catch the 22-second mark, look at the speed they're going. It was like trying to catch a horse race in the front row. I was following it as fast as I possibly could, and I did not know at the time I was shooting that they were not planes, you know, at all. I just thought, you know, they were. Looking at the video myself, I saw that they were these dark-looking orbs going at very high speeds and leaving a massive trail across the sky. I mean, 2 in a row. I mean, anybody would think that is airport traffic is so wrong.
It's really amazing. I've seen these planes, shooting across the sky, and most of the time they're like horizontally, number one. But number two, they never go in tandem like this.
There's people in other states that have caught like 5 in a row doing the same thing, but they did look like planes. I mean, they are shaped like planes. I got a feeling what we're seeing are shaped like planes a lot of the time. But every time I go out and shoot these chemtrails, I always think in the back of my mind, show me what you really look like. Just show me. I don't say it, but I think it. And that particular time, they actually showed me what they look like. And that's why I think that's what they all are. There's planes below. There's passenger jets that are spraying. I know that. They're hooked up. And I think it's to throw us off to what's kind of really going on up there. And the ones that are out of sight are so high up there that you can't make out what it really is a lot of the time. And I think those are not good at all.
It's clear that some of these trails couldn't have been made by planes. Those were sprayed by orbs. Even the most maneuverable fighter jet wouldn't be able to make turns like this. Whoever is doing this is trying to show you that there are non-conventional craft in operation. This video shows an orb dispersing an aerosol trail in one spot. It emits an electromagnetic field which causes the structure of the aerosol to break down. For some reason, they decided to create a break in the trail there, maybe to mark that as the edge of a cloud. If it did this inside a cloud that was carrying some moisture, that would cause it to rain. Again, this demonstrates that the aerosol contains materials that react to EMFs. That's also what causes lightning. Excess electrical charge built up in the aerosol layer from the application of EMFs. This is the source of all the clouds and weather on this planet. Aerosol spraying and EMFs. Without that, there's nothing. As I said, I've seen these orbs in person, 2 times in broad daylight from only a few feet away, and 2 times at night, one from about 30 feet away, and the other was following a plane, probably a sprayer. They were both glowing yellow, which is why I could see them at night. The one following the plane got far behind at one point. It was kind of meandering, and then all of a sudden it went into something like warp speed from Star Trek, and caught right back up to the plane. It covered that distance in a fraction of a second and left a streak of light across the sky. So these things can move extremely fast when they want to, though it seems that they need a little time to charge up before they can do that. They can also hover perfectly still and reverse direction almost instantly. They can be controlled remotely, and it's possible that some are controlled by AI, basically running on programs. This is an example of an orb generating a plane hologram, and that's obvious because it stopped motionless in midair. There's an orb inside of that plane hologram, which for some reason is just hovering there. It's either a malfunction in the orb, or an error in the program, or someone is doing it intentionally. Here's another one that's even closer to the ground. You can see that the hologram lacks the details of a real plane, as it looks like there aren't any windows. Of course, if it were flying at its normal elevation, you wouldn't see that. And obviously, you wouldn't see this in an airport. These orbs are coming out of underground or underwater bases. This is a shot of an orb deactivating its holographic cloak, where the quote-unquote plane suddenly disappears. You don't see the orb afterwards, so it either has a refractive cloak, basically invisibility, or it just took off at a very high speed, or perhaps teleported. This is an orb generating an intense electromagnetic field, which is exciting the air molecules around it, causing them to give off light. The yellow glow is consistent with what I've seen personally. Interestingly, this field has quite a bit of variance to it, and at certain points, you'll see it expand and change color to a magenta tone. It also becomes more stable when it does that. It begins to generate its plane hologram here. And now you can see a glowing orb inside the shadowy form of a plane, which even has blinking lights. So this is conclusive proof that these orbs are disguised as planes. Ordinarily, they wouldn't be glowing like this, so you wouldn't see the orb inside the plane. But they are in there. This is a poorly cloaked craft that was photographed in Italy by the Google Maps vehicle. This is obviously a much larger craft than the aerosol orbs, and probably contains a number of crew members. It looks like it's covered by a rocky surface, but I believe that's actually a holographic cloak that's supposed to look like a cloud. For some reason, the hologram is broken down to a very simplistic level, where the surface has gone from being smooth to blocky. It would be like reducing the vertex and face count on a 3D model of a cloud, so that it ends up looking like a rocky surface made up of sharp edges and flat faces. This should look like a puffy white cloud, but either due to a malfunction or intentionally, it looks like a floating rock-covered tube. It also looks like it's at a fairly low elevation, well below cloud level. So that says to me that the operator of this craft did this intentionally. He knew that the Google vehicle was down there taking pictures, so he descended and minimized the hologram. Once the pictures were taken, the hologram was restored, and the craft went back up to cloud level. So it was only visible for a few minutes at most. If you were to get inside that craft, you'd find Dracs or some other non-human beings in there. You might find Dracs in their human imitation forms, but they're still Dracs. Looking at the drawing from Protegiorm Liber, there's a cylindrical craft on the right side, which is either crashing or launching. The craft in the photo is also cylindrical, except that it has a slight bend in it around the base of the arm. That's probably the same type of craft that they saw in ancient Rome, that's seen again in modern Italy. I have no idea what that arm is. It seems like an odd structure to have in a craft like this, but it must serve some purpose. These appear to be disc-shaped or ellipsoid craft cloaked by cloud holograms. Again, the hologram size and complexity have been reduced, so you're seeing close to the actual shape of the craft. I've seen this in person as well, a large elliptical cloud with almost perfectly smooth edges. I actually took a picture of it and put it in one of my videos, but I don't have the original anymore. It was stationary for over an hour until the time I left. The other clouds around it were moving, but not that one. I looked at it through my binoculars, and I could see the aerosol blowing off the edges, while the body remained stationary. They must be pumping out aerosol to supplement the hologram, so that it looks more like a real cloud. You can see that in the top left photo. It has a trail of aerosol behind it, either because it's moving, or it's stationary and the wind is blowing it off. The one in the bottom left photo doesn't appear to be putting out any aerosol at all. That's probably just the hologram, and you can see that without the aerosol, it doesn't even remotely look like a real cloud. Of all the photos I've shown, these are the only ones that I'm not entirely certain are legitimate. The one at the bottom left is an agency photo, so presumably that one is real. But whether these specific photos are legitimate or not, I have seen this in person, so I know that they exist, and that they're disguising themselves as clouds. This is the same craft in a different photo. It's clear that they were taken within a short time of each other, since the cloud formations in the background are about the same. However, the shape of the cloud hologram is different. It changed noticeably in that short period of time, so it can't be aerosol. That proves that it's a hologram. We are enslaved to an alien empire, imprisoned on one of its false worlds. To free ourselves from this prison, we must have the correct perspective, which is based in reality, not the illusion. The illusion is that this is a human world made up of independent nations, that we're free, and that our leaders are working for our benefit. The reality is that this is an alien world, with all nations under the control of Satan, and that we're here to serve as thralls. We are the cattle in this system, living out our lives in a cage, ultimately leading to the destruction of our souls. This is not a human world that has aliens in it. This is an alien world that has humans in it. It's an artificial construct that they've made to look like a human world, but it's not our civilization. It's their creation, and they're in charge of it. The world that you are led to believe in is a lie. They've fabricated our entire existence on this planet. It's all fake. They've filled your head with nothing but lies. That's what prevents you from knowing the truth. That's how they control you. You've accepted the lie as the basis of your existence, so the truth has become your enemy because it destroys the illusion you're attached to. The real reason you're here is to serve the Dracs, as labor and as a source of food and energy. They attacked or abducted your ancestors on their homeworld and turned them into a slave race. They collected humans from different planets across the galaxy and brought them here to create what is basically a slave colony, a place to farm humans and harvest their souls. You were born into this world as a slave, a thrall to the Dracs. to live out your entire life under their control without ever knowing where you really are. That's your true history. The movie The Matrix is based on this reality. It's a false world, a construct that's been made to look like a human world, but is actually the creation of a non-human race. And they've set this up to harvest energy from humans, to basically turn them into batteries. The machines represent the Dracs, and the agents of their programs that can take human forms, the shapeshifters. They also have supernatural abilities, which we know is true to reality. On the other side, Neo is Yeshua HaMashiach, and the people of Zion are the tribes of Israel. The movie Dark City is saying the same thing. Humanity is imprisoned in a construct that looks like a human world, which is under the control of a non-human race. They're spider-like beings that have implanted themselves into human corpses so they can animate them and pretend to be human. And they have some supernatural abilities, most notably the ability to levitate. In that movie, John Murdoch is Yeshua HaMashiach, and in the end, he destroys the strangers and takes control of Dark City. In John Milius as Conan the Barbarian, Thul 'Sadum represents the Drac shapeshifters, and of course Conan is Yeshua HaMashiach, a man of great strength who comes to crush the snakes of the earth, who are actually dragons. The Battle of the Mounds is the Battle of Armageddon, Megiddo. Stargate and Enemy Mine also described this situation. In Stargate, the humans were enslaved on their homeworlds, and then brought to another planet to work. But in Enemy Mine, it's reversed from reality. The Dracs are enslaved to the humans. Interestingly, the Dracs in Enemy Mine are hermaphrodites, and they give birth through an orifice in their abdomens. We know that's true to reality as well. You can also find the truth in music. Wednesday 13 has several songs from the Monsters of the Universe Come On Plague album, which tell you where you really are. You are being ruled by shape-shifting reptilians that have disguised themselves as humans. He's telling you this straight out. And he knows this because he's one of them, as are all the well-known musicians. 666 is the mark of the beast in Revelation. I think the number 6 is relevant to them because it must be the basis of their numeric system, since they have 3 fingers on each hand. The basis of our numeric system is 10 because we have 10 fingers. So a race with 6 fingers total will have a basis of 6, incremented by 3s. That would also explain why the highest rank of the Masons is 33. All hypnotized by the hollow moon. The Eye in the Sky song also refers to mind control. So you have 2 sources saying the same thing, and there is evidence that the moon has some effect on people's minds. I'm sure they have a giant psychotronic generator in there that's putting out a field over the Earth, and this may interact with the psychotronic devices that we have around us, TVs, cell phones, Wi-Fi. The intergalactic line tells you that this world is part of a larger empire which spans the galaxy. Another solar system controls the Earth like a prison. Again, that says that this world is part of an interstellar, intergalactic empire, and it is possible that their objective is to exterminate all the human races by destroying their souls here. If there are no human souls left to incarnate, that's the end of the human race, everywhere in the galaxy. So that could be their ultimate objective, to eliminate humanity by destroying their souls, rather than destroying their bodies and having them reincarnate somewhere else. You're mine now, in this hell I built for you. That's talking about this false world you're living in, the purpose of which is to torment you, so they can extract your life force energies and harvest your soul. The title Moonchild says that they arrive from the moon, that it's their home base. We know that's true. I am he. This says that they're all males. We know that they're hermaphrodites, but if you had to classify them as one gender or the other, you choose male, since they all have penises. I've spoken to a female imitation who confirmed that they regard themselves as males. She said that the male aspect is always dominant over the female aspect. The bornless one. They must be born, so I don't take this literally. Maybe it means that they're born as eggs and then hatch later. Babylon, the Scarlet Whore. This is a reference to the Whore of Babylon in Revelation, and as I'll discuss later, she is a representation of the Dracs and their empire. They infiltrate by imitating human forms, so that you think they're human. That's the only way they can gain your trust and get you to obey. The world is a vampire because they're draining your life force and soul, and they're secret because they're disguised as humans. The bullet with butterfly wings is me, aimed at killing the Dracs. I am the wayward son of the God of Israel. The Dracs abducted me from my biological parents when I was an infant and set me up into fake life to control me. That's why I'm wayward. There will be peace once I've defeated the Dracs. That's what it means. This song was originally written in 1973, which is the year I was born, at least according to my fake birth certificate. From this point forward, I'll be speaking specifically to my people, the Jews. For those of you who are not Jews, you should still continue to watch, because this information will be useful to you as well. You should know this. I just want to make it clear that my criticisms are not directed at you. If this fails, it's not your fault. The responsibility for that falls entirely on the tribes of Israel. All of the so-called Jews that you believe are running the world, and the banks, corporations, and government, Rothschild, Kissinger, Greenspan, Netanyahu, and so on, and the great minds like Einstein, they're not Jews. All of those individuals are Dracs. All of them. The real Jews, the humans, are in charge of nothing. Nothing whatsoever. There isn't a single Jew in that position. The reality is, you are at the bottom. The real Jews are the ones who went through the Holocaust. The ones running the world are all Dracs. And of course, they never went to those camps. They were the ones behind it. Rothschild funded the Nazi Party. And Hitler was a Drac that came from another fake Jewish family. Now it makes sense why these supposed Jews would support the genocide of other Jews. Because they're actually dragons. In addition to making the 666 sign, Netanyahu is reverting his horns, which is that large bulge on his forehead. Kissinger is also reverting his horns in this photo with Nixon. That's Jacob Rothschild on the right, and he's reduced the firmness of the tissue in his left cheek, so that he's able to push his fingers deep into his face, perhaps even into the bone. Also notice that the pores on his nose are just texture, empty craters in the surface of the skin. They're all Dracs imitating human bodies, pretending to be Jews. I showed Obama reverting his extra lip and chin bump earlier, and you can see the same thing on Netanyahu here. They may look like different human races, but they're actually the same race. And in fact, if you saw Obama and Netanyahu in their native forms, you probably couldn't tell them apart. This is David Ben-Gurion, the founder and first Prime Minister of modern Israel. He's reverting his mouth here, which is extended out to the sides, far beyond the limits of any human mouth. From Ben-Gurion to Netanyahu, every one of your Prime Ministers has been a Drac. The captivity gave the Dracs a means to heavily infiltrate Jewish society, allowing them to bring in new families from the outside. Those families were Dracs, and from that point forward, they became part of the Jewish community, families like Rothschild. That's how you ended up with so many Dracs among you. They took you over during your captivity, and when you left captivity, they went with you, holding all the positions of control. And that's the way it's been since then. You're not physically captive anymore, but you're still under the Dracs' control, the synagogue of Satan mentioned in Revelation. Do you think that the Persian king released the Jews out of the goodness of his heart? Of course not. They released the Jews at that time because they had their system of control in place. They had completely taken over Jewish society. Your enemies became one with you, so they could control you and destroy you from within. Ever since then, you have been serving them, and you continue to serve them today, as they are killing you off in their fake Israel. The rabbis have established themselves as the foundation of Jewish society. You treat them as your teachers and masters. They've been with you so long that you trust them implicitly, without question. But how did the rabbinical order first come into existence? It was created after the codification of the Babylonian Talmud in the 6th century AD. So its roots go back to Babylon, at the time of the captivity. Who do you think had control of the priesthood and laws at that time? Do you think that the Jews were in control during their captivity? Of course not. The Babylonian rulership and priesthood controlled the laws and religious order of Jewish society. They established the basis of the Babylonian Talmud. And of course the Babylonian rulers and priests were Dracs. And later it was Dracs pretending to be Jews who wrote the Babylonian Talmud. They created the rabbinical order to control Jewish society. So no matter what country you emigrated to, the rabbis would always be with you, controlling every Jewish community. All of the rabbis at the top of that hierarchy would be Dracs. That's been true from the beginning, and it's still true today. In fact, the vast majority of rabbis are Dracs, not just in Israel, but all over the world. In effect, they are modern-day priests of Baal. They are working for their father, Satan. If there are human rabbis, they'll be at the bottom of the hierarchy, so they won't be able to change anything in the system. They'd never challenge the rabbis above them anyway, even if they knew that there was something wrong. This is former Chief Rabbi Israel Meir Lau speaking at the former Auschwitz death camp in Germany. By making the horn sign, he's saying, "We, the Dracs, were behind the Holocaust." And that's what happened. The Drac rabbis sold you out to the Nazis. They had all the information on the Jews, their families, friends, where they lived and worked, and they handed that over to the Nazis. The Jews that went to the rabbis for help were collected in one place, and then turned over to the Nazis. So the rabbis had a central role in the execution of the Holocaust. And now, you sit there in Israel admiring them, the same group that killed our people then, and is still working to destroy you today.
Il capo della Wehrmacht, il maresciallo Keitel, firma la resa incondizionata della Germania nazista davanti al russo Zhukov, suo nemico mortale, circondato dagli alleati. L'inglese Teller, l'americano Spaatz e il francese Delatte del Pacifico. In seguito, Keitel sarà condannato dal Tribunale Internazionale di Norimberga.
And now you can see who was really behind the Holocaust. It wasn't the German people, the humans. All of the Nazis and high-ranking officers were Dracs, and nearly all of the concentration camp guards were Dracs. The few human guards that they had were the ones that they left behind when the Allies showed up, so they could be executed to appease the public. None of the Dracs were caught. Hitler didn't die there, nor did any of the other high-ranking officers. Sometimes they show photos of these individuals after their supposed executions, and it may be them, but as you've seen, they can simulate horrific injuries using their polymorphic ability, and right after the picture is taken, they regenerate back to normal. Hitler and company either went underground, or they took new identities, maybe even new imitation codes, so they could look like completely different people. The Nazis placed this group of concentration camps in the pattern of a pentagram. It's not perfect, but it's clearly meant to be a pentagram. There probably wasn't a suitable place on the other side of that border for the right arm point, so they had to stay on this side. This is the mastermind of the Holocaust, and World War II in general. This god of dragons, known by many names, Baphomet, Satan, Lucifer, Baal, Moloch, Set, and others. His children executed it, but he is the origin. I believe that this symbol originates from Buddhism, a pentagram and a reverse swastika encircled by the Ouroboros. This connects the Dracs to both symbols. These dragons were behind the Holocaust, following the plan of their father, Satan. The Holocaust was one of, if not the most important objective of World War II. They needed the cover of a wartime environment to execute that plan, and all of the world leaders knew about it from the beginning. They knew they had to keep the war going on long enough so they could kill off the maximum number of Jews. It was predetermined that Germany would lose, so they knew that the blame would go away with the fall of the Nazi leadership. Good guys win, bad guys lose. Justice is done. If they could have gotten away with it, they would have done the same in other countries, but then they wouldn't be good guys anymore. Once the war was over, the Dracs had to find another way to continue their extermination of the Jews. And so they recreated Israel to gather the remaining Jews together to create what is basically a giant concentration camp. The current incarnation of Israel is not as it was originally, under the hand of my father and the Jewish kings. Today's Israel belongs to Satan and his dragons. Right from the beginning, all of your prime ministers have been Dracs. They created this Israel to serve their agenda. They want to gather the remaining Jews together so they can exterminate them. They created this Israel to be your grave. You are completely surrounded by Dracs there, yet you remain completely unaware of their presence. Some of your neighbors are them, classmates, co-workers, perhaps even closer, in your circle of friends, or even your lover or spouse. They are there to control you, attack you, weaken you, and ultimately kill you. They are contaminating your food and water. They are infecting you with diseases and attacking you with radiation. You are being killed off, and you don't even have a clue. The Holocaust never ended. They just changed its method. Instead of mass killings, it's now a genocide of attrition. The Dracs are killing you slowly and silently, one by one, day by day. They are killing you in the hospitals. They are killing you in the prisons. They are killing you on the streets. They are killing you with disease. They are killing you with cancer. They are killing you with drugs. They are killing you with microwave and psychotronic attacks. You are being killed off and replaced by Dracs imitating Jews. Year after year, there are fewer Jews and more Drac imitations. There are fewer Jews in the world today than there were at the end of World War II. I can't prove this right now, but my father has told me that this is true, and I know it is. All of the increase in the official numbers of the Jewish population comes from Drac imitations. The number of real Jews, humans, is decreasing, while the number of Dracs imitating Jews is increasing. That's what's going on in your fake Israel right now. They've been trying to destroy you for thousands of years. Do you think they're going to stop now? That they all of a sudden had a change of heart? They're just as determined to exterminate you today as they were during World War II. But they can't get away with mass killings anymore, not in a peacetime environment, so they've switched to a method of attrition. Several Dracs have told me this, that their plan is to wipe out all the Jews. It's an invisible genocide, because the official numbers show the Jewish population increasing, but those increases are all Dracs. My estimate is that up to half of the Jewish population in Israel are Dracs, and over a third of the world's Jewish population outside of Israel are Dracs. In time, all that will be left of the quote-unquote Jewish population are Drac imitations. All of the real Jews, the Hebrews, will be extinct. But the other humans won't know that, because they'll look around and see all of these Dracs imitating Jews. You are being exterminated by a malevolent alien race. If that isn't enough to motivate you to fight, then you are truly hopeless. You are nothing more than cattle, and you will die like cattle. This is the Israeli Supreme Court building, the construction of which was largely funded by the Rothschilds. A pyramid with an eye inside a circle. It doesn't get any more in your face than this. They're openly showing you who's in charge of Israel. They even made it green, which is the same reason the US dollar is green. Do you think that this is a coincidence? How many of you Jews in Israel were even aware of this? That's Hitler making the pyramid sign, which represents the same pyramid in the Israeli Supreme Court building. These things are right in front of you all the time, but you're blind to all of it. That's why you're cattle. The group that slaughtered you in the Holocaust is the same group that's in charge of you today, and you are still being exterminated, albeit slowly. Of course, the Masons are the same group. They're all dragons. Here's Netanyahu making the 666 and V signs. As I said, all of your prime ministers have been Dracs, so Netanyahu is just a continuation of what has been. They've been in total control since the creation of the current Israel. It has been a very long time since you've had a human leader, all the way back to the original Israel. Here's Donald Trump and Mahmoud Abbas making the exact same hand signs, and the reason is, they're all Dracs. You don't accidentally make these kinds of hand signs. These V signs don't mean peace or victory, and these 666 signs clearly don't mean A-OK. It means 666, I am a servant of Satan. There's an illusion that they're on different sides, but the reality is they're all united. They're all dragons working for their father Satan, and their objective is to keep you, all of humanity, in this cage. In the case of the Jews, their objective is to exterminate them. The Palestinian leaders are Dracs. Arafat was a Drac, and Abbas is a Drac. They're in league with the Dracs running Israel. They follow the same agenda. They both serve Satan. They created this false conflict to keep you in an endless cycle of terror. They're using this to distract you from the fact that your real enemies are among you, disguised as Jews, and that they're exterminating you. The Palestinian leadership must also be removed, and all of the Dracs must be removed from the Palestinian population. I have nothing against the Palestinian people, the humans, and I hope that they would agree with my reason for doing this. Once the Dracs are gone, the Palestinians will choose their own leaders, and I will speak to them. There will be no more Israeli military operations in Gaza, and the terrorist attacks will stop. The Dracs are behind this conflict on both sides. Once they're removed, that's the end of the conflict. The terrorist organizations are also controlled by the Dracs through their intelligence agencies. They may attempt to perpetrate more attacks, but it will be much more difficult for them to operate inside of Israel once the identification program is in place. If you're caught without an ID, you'll be taken into custody and tested. If they're otherwise clear, humans will be issued an ID card and released. Dracs will be kept for interrogation and research. Anyone who tries to escape being tested will be shot with incendiary rounds. All of the rabbis at the top of the hierarchy are Dracs. All of the top positions in the Israeli government are held by Dracs. They will have to be removed to liberate Israel from the hand of Satan. That is my Father's will. He does not tolerate these dragons ruling in his house. The synagogue of Satan does not belong in the house of our God. You have allowed them to defile our Father's sanctuary. You must correct this insult. All modern mainstream religions are satanic. Catholicism is the most blatant about it, with its rituals and ceremonies and pyramidal hierarchy. All of the popes have been Dracs. That shouldn't be a surprise at this point. You'll also find that the vast majority of priests are Dracs. Needless to say, I will abolish Catholicism. Riyad Salah is a Drac. He's making an obvious 666 sign here, and he's beginning to revert his center forehead ridge, that sharp crease in his brow, going up from the side of his nose. He's also reverting one of the creases in the skin on his neck, which again is probably a gap between scale segments. Most Israelis know who he is, but for those who don't, he's a prominent leader of the Islamic movement in Israel. Even for the average person who doesn't believe in conspiracies, they'd have to wonder why Yasser Arafat, a supposed Muslim, is making the same hand sign as a Jewish rabbi. They don't appear to have anything in common. They're different races and religions, which are supposedly in opposition to each other. But as you know now, they're actually the same race and religion. They're both dragons that belong to the synagogue of Satan. The rabbi on the left is definitely a Drac, and the two on the right are probably Dracs as well. Also notice the guy in the right photo who's making the V sign and giving the middle finger at the same time. As I showed earlier, the crescent moon and pentagram are satanic symbols. That's because Islam is a creation of Satan, and that religion is controlled by the Dracs, just like the other religions. Again, you'll find that the vast majority of imams and religious leaders in Islam are Dracs. Once they're identified and removed, that would effectively bring an end to Islam. Without the Dracs there to dictate and enforce the laws, it would fall apart. The Christian religions are also controlled by the Dracs, but they have some validity because they're based on the Bible. The Dracs can twist the truth to some extent, but they can't change it completely. All religions are systems of control. The Dracs are using them to manipulate humanity for their own gain. The people who belong to these religions are actually worshipping Satan, following his rules and giving up their life force and souls to be harvested as energy. These religions are trying to get you to accept Satan as your god. That's what's really going on. The Dracs also use religion as a divider, to persecute certain groups or create conflicts, which they've done many times in the past. Wars, inquisitions, and witch hunts. I am the son of the God of Israel, the embodiment of part of his consciousness. I've never been involved with religion, nor will I ever be. My father does not require this, and neither does your God. It's your willful ignorance that has destroyed you. My father has shown you the truth many times, and every time you have rejected or simply ignored him, just like you're doing now. He has tried to give you the knowledge to save yourselves, but all you've done is spit in his face for it. You're not even wise to do evil. You're not wise to do anything. You do evil because you blindly follow evil, not once questioning the intentions of your so-called leaders. You're completely unable to recognize when someone is telling you the truth, and you're unable to recognize when someone is lying to you. You have no ability to discern between good and evil. How long will you accept the persons of the wicked? Now you know who that's talking about. You have accepted the Dracs as your masters, and they are leading you into darkness to destroy you. They are killing you off and corrupting your soul as they do it, but you remain blind, deaf, and dumb to all of it. Your shepherds are Dracs. That's why you've been led astray. That, and your refusal to listen to my father, who has been trying to tell you this for thousands of years. For thousands of years, you have been in violation of our Father's first and most important commandment. You have put another god before him. And it's not even another human god. It's an alien god, the god of dragons that we know today as Satan. The religion Judaism is his creation. It is not the creation of my Father. Judaism follows Satan, not the God of Israel. Once I become the leader of Israel, I will abolish Judaism and the rabbinical order. I am the word and will of the God of Israel. These others are impostors. They don't speak for my Father. They speak for Satan. Nothing has changed since then. Baal is Satan, and you still serve him today. You have rejected the will of your Father and chosen to fornicate with your enemies. Time and time again, you have ignored the word of your God as he is trying to save you. He sent me the first time to show you the truth, and you murdered me for it. You cut off the right hand of your God and spit in his face. You have chosen to remain whores to Satan, even though his only interest is to destroy you. This translation uses the word foreign, but other translations use the word strange, which is more accurate to the true meaning. Alien would also be appropriate here. So what this is saying is that Solomon had sex with Dracs. Pharaoh's daughter was certainly a Drac, and there were others among his many wives and concubines. They were the ones that convinced him to put up these idols and altars of other gods, who again are all Satan under different names. So Solomon was responsible for the early corruption of Israel. Those altars of Baal and Moloch that he put up are where the Jews burned their children. It was King Hezekiah and Josiah that destroyed those altars under the commandment of my father. However, I want to make it clear that it is simply not possible for a Drac and a human to produce offspring. It's an entirely different species, an entirely different family, and their genetic code may not even be DNA, the double helix. I've spoken to several Dracs that have confirmed that it's impossible for a Drac and a human to produce offspring. They said that the genetic code is completely incompatible, different number of chromosomes, and different code structure. So there are no hybrids. You're either a human or a Drac. A horse and a donkey can produce a mule because they belong to the same family, and the genetic code is fairly close, with only a few missing chromosomes. But mules cannot exist as an independent, self-sustaining species. They can't reproduce with other mules, only with a horse or a donkey. So in a natural situation, their offspring will always revert back to a horse or donkey. The same is true of ligers. So even if two different species can produce a hybrid, it can't exist as an independent species. Now in Solomon's case, it's possible that some of his Drac wives had children with other Dracs, and then tried to pass them off as his children. That would be a way for them to take over the leadership of Israel, if a Drac was chosen to be king. That's probably why my father decided to take Israel away from Solomon's line for a time. This is the purpose of your existence, which you have forgotten. You are here to do your Father's will. That's why he created your souls. You are his hands in this world. In this time, he needs you to fight this war against our enemies, to defeat these aliens that have enslaved humanity. The meaning of this should be clear now. The woman wearing the garland or crown with 12 stars represents the 12 tribes of Israel, and her child is Yeshua HaMashiach. That's me. The dragon represents the Dracs and their god Satan. It has 7 heads to show that they have global dominance, perhaps representing the 7 continents. It may also represent their dominance over time, with each head symbolizing an empire of an era. So this is saying that the Dracs are at war with the 12 tribes of Israel. I am here to lead you in this war against the Dracs, and bring an end to their dominance over humanity. This is talking about the same thing. The ruler of this world is Satan, and he rules through his children, who control human society. The 12 tribes of Israel are the only human group that can defeat them, led by the God of Israel, directing his will through me. Notice in the picture on the right that the dragon is creating what appears to be an ice storm from the end of its tail. That says that they control the weather, which I've shown is true. They're the ones that are going to create all of those disasters that are described in Revelation, including a massive ice storm. The Whore of Babylon represents the Dracs and their empire, which controls all the nations. The beast she's riding has 7 heads and 10 horns like the dragon, and that represents a global organization. That would be the UN. The beast is a military coalition formed out of the UN that they put together to attack Israel. Obviously, this happens after I become the leader of Israel. The beast is a composite of different creatures, each one symbolizing a superpower. The leopard's body represents Europe, the EU. The bear's feet represents Russia, and the lion's mouth represents the United States. The mouth speaking great things is the false prophet, who will basically be the front man for the coalition. The coalition lasts for 42 months, 3.5 years, from the time of its inception to the time its forces are destroyed in Israel. This is the same beast described by Daniel, except that it's shown as 4 separate beasts. A lion with eagle's wings is definitely the United States. The description of the fourth beast is clearly that of a military coalition. Its purpose is to destroy. The horn speaking pompous words is the false prophet. The fourth beast, the coalition, is destroyed in the battle in Israel, but the other beasts, the US, Europe, and Russia, continue to exist after that. When I see images like this, it makes me inclined to believe that Pope Francis will be the false prophet described in Revelation, and obviously the last pope. They can certainly make it look like he's capable of performing healing miracles. All they have to do is bring deformed Dracs like this guy, have the Pope lay hands on him, and then later, the Drac morphs back to his normal human imitation form. So it looks like the Pope healed him. He can gain a lot of followers that way, and perhaps turn himself into a godlike figure in the public's eye. Notice that his left hand is turned gray, along with part of the guy's head where he's touching, and he's also reverting one of the ridges on the side of his forehead,